Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Between the Covers. My name is Bradley Shaw, and this evening we're talking to Fern Schreuder, the author of The General's Log. What is it? The General's Log, Tales from the Lockdown. Isn't that what we call it, the subtitle?
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us, Fern. Thank you. Very excited about your book. So please tell everyone watching about your book that's coming out soon.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for having me here. So The General's Log, Tales from the Lockdown, was actually written last year when we were all in lockdown in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's a funny, lighthearted, slightly satirical look at raising small children during the middle of a global pandemic. So it's written in diary style entries, so military style entries, and I actually use a lot of military terminology within the book just to describe the absolute ridiculous shenanigans that happened in our house during lockdown while we were trying to do normal everyday things. So I think everyone was probably in the same position as me. So we were working from home. I had a husband working from home, was trying to homeschool a prep, and also trying to wrangle a very feisty, fiery 2-year-old. And
Oh, no.
it was mayhem.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I understand too that you wrote this just as a pure observational process of your own family. Is that correct?
It was actually.
Inspiration.
Learned a lot about our family.
That must have been quite an experience reading that. I don't know how much is fiction and how much is truth, but I tell you what, you must have had a very interesting time during that time. You had also military input, I believe, from your godfather or grandfather.
Yes, he's a very, very close family member.
Yeah.
He's known me since I was born, so that's 40 years now.
Congratulations.
So he was in the military for a very long time, and he gave me a little bit of input into some of the jargon. Yeah. But it's also a little bit of an in-joke with my husband, because I like things to be just a certain way, and he picks on me for trying to run the house with military precision. So it sort of stemmed a little bit from that as well.
Yeah, I live with one of those militant house managers. Yes, I understand that profusely. I respect your husband's point of view. So tell me, with writing this book, obviously you were in a situation that was very stressful. That was very for everybody involved. So you obviously took a humorous approach to trying to deal with some of the elements. Did your kids and husband know you were writing this book about them, or?
They did, actually. Because the way that it started was I actually started doing little Facebook posts every day. And I think it was a way for me to laugh. If I could look at the ridiculousness, it made me feel a little bit better about it. But if I could also put it out there and get somebody else to laugh in a time that was, last year was pretty hard for a lot of people. So if I could get somebody to laugh and make them feel a bit better about themselves, then that was a win. So I think
this book's important for that, particularly that period. Like that period was very stressful, very difficult. And I think humor is something that got lost in some of the elements. We're all fearful, we're all confused, we're all uncertain sometimes. So I think your book is actually, in reflection, in hindsight, even going to give people a bit more comfort and perspective about what it was, and they'll laugh at their own situations. So I'm sure everyone's got a tale where lockdown was affecting them, but they had to have an element, and us Aussies have that humour, I think, that cushions the blow,
that's exactly
so to speak.
Right. And in the time it was probably very, very stressful. But looking back on it now, maybe we can have a bit of a giggle about it.
And that's right. I mean, your book is what impressed me was its perspective of how you did that during the actual situation, because you actually were able to step out and see humour and experience that with your children and your husband, and write something very clever, I think. And I think you'll do very well with this book. Everyone watching, by the way, it's out May 15th. It is available everywhere. So please grab a copy of Fern's book. So tell us about other aspects of your writing, which is, normally I go into delving questions like, how did you research this book, and what were your writing challenges, and what did you enjoy most about the writing process? But from what I can tell on this book being so I guess you're locked into the book's process because they're your family, and you're also locked into the fact that you have a lot more time, I guess, to do the book. So what for you were the real challenges of writing this book in perspective of the story you were trying to achieve? Once you decided it was going to be a book, because as you said, it started on Facebook and that's generally candid. Once you decided it was going to be a book and you wanted to put the challenge in there and create it, what happened for you in that process?
Yeah, it was once I decided that this was going to be something and let's see what we can do with this, some of those days where not really much happened, dare I say it, the kids were actually behaving themselves.
Yeah, so you got to stick them with a prod. Get up, what are you going to do?
So I was like, well, what do I write about today?
Yeah.
We had we didn't actually have too many of those days, but there were a few days where not much happened. And but then also, there were some days where some were a little bit harder than others. And I was like, I'm not feeling it today. I don't, you get a bit of writer's block, I guess.
Yeah.
You just can't, you lose where you're going. So that was a bit of a challenge sometimes. I'd have lots one day and I'd be all up and about and I'd be able to form it. But then other days I just couldn't even get my words out. So that was a little bit of a struggle.
So you stepped away from it a bit for the time and sort of just let the days happen and just try to go through the motions until it came back up into research. Did you create a writing style where you wanted to allocate hours, allocate time? What was your writing formula, I guess, in a sense? Tell us about that process.
Okay, well, the writing formula, sort of, as I mentioned earlier, started with those Facebook posts. So putting one of those out, and I sort of set a time that I wanted it to go out. This is the military again.
600?
Yeah. I wanted these posts to go out at a certain time. And so that was happening every day at a certain time. It was giving me a little bit of clarity about my day. But it was also giving the people that were reading it something to look forward to. Now, I didn't know this until later, but I'd had a rough day with the kids one day and they were completely over the top. I was exhausted. So I actually didn't write a post that day and I went to bed early just to reset and regroup. I got up the next morning and I had about 8 to 10 text messages from different people saying, where was the general's log? We didn't get our post yesterday. So that sort of formed part of my process as well. I then
discipline.
I had to have something ready to go every day. And then once we got out of the first lockdown, we had that little 2-week reprieve. I actually stopped doing the Facebook posts, but I kept writing it in my own time. And then putting everything together and looking back on it, I then extended parts and I guess turned it into a bit more of a manuscript. So reread it several times, made sure that it flowed. Got my little military personnel to read through it and give me a little bit extra. So I guess that was my process.
Well, that's good. So how many hours a day did you find yourself writing once you sort of moved it off Facebook? That was obviously a dedicated timeline, but did you set up hours and revisions and processes of actually crafting the book?
I did actually. So once everything was done and dusted and taken off Facebook and actually sort of turning it into the manuscript, I sort of set aside about an hour and a half every day. I made my husband, the Lieutenant General, he was in charge of the troops for that time. And I had my little quiet time where I could reread and process, and there was a little bit of research with military terminology and just trying to make that flow throughout the book as well.
Authentic.
So
sorry.
No, I was just going to say probably about an hour and a half every day in a nice quiet corner looking out the window at the piece.
That's good. That's good. It's what you need sometimes, just that habit. And once you set the habits up, it does become a little easier. So with that too, were there situations or elements that you deleted from the book that you couldn't write, that you felt were too personal to the family or too controversial to the situations of some of the craziness you were experiencing with your militant processes?
There was, as you know, I don't think I'm alone in saying this, and I think a lot of other mothers, because I initially wrote this for other mums out there, there are a lot of references to drinking wine
Yeah, I noticed that. I was actually going to say, I think in chapter 3, you actually write very sloshed. It's very good. I did notice there was a few sips in the wine there.
A few patches on the manuscript.
Yeah.
But no, so that I don't think I'm alone in that. I think
Yeah.
it was a bit of a running joke throughout COVID as well,
Yeah.
that, wine sales. Well, we know for a fact, don't we, that wine sales
went up. Yes, that and toilet paper, I guess.
Yeah. So I had to tone some of that down because I'm actually a teacher in my real life, and so is my husband.
Of course, yes.
So we were. He was probably a little bit more worried about it when he heard that it was going to be a book.
We sound like binge drinkers. We don't want to do that.
No, we're actually quite responsible people. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, you could have put the metaphor in there, like Winnie the Pooh with honey. You could have said, like, this is needed for sustenance and for endurance.
I changed a little bit of it to coffee drinking because I thought that was a little bit more PC.
Yeah, that'll keep you much calmer.
Yeah.
So, is this your first book in general, like first book as such, as putting a first novel out? Oh, well done.
Yes.
And did you find you wanted to? What made you decide to make it a novel? What made you decide to be a writer of this particular tale, as opposed to the Facebook posts leading the experience? But really, this is a big step to really put it into a bigger world of readers. What made you decide to do that, to take that on at this time?
I think it was actually the personal feedback from some of my friends and family. Yeah. My dad is a teacher as well, and he's been a fantastic father and role model for me throughout my life, and he's always been really supportive, but he's also been one of my biggest critics in a good way, as dads do. Yep. But he actually said to me, he said, you need to do something else with this. He said, this is really funny. It's really entertaining. He was the one that gave me the push. He said, I think you need to do something else with this. And my dad doesn't say things like that lightly. So I went, okay, well, maybe I should.
Good. And that's right. You've done it well. And he's right. I think you're right. I mean, it was a challenge for us too as publishers. Like, our editors had to go through your book 4 to 5 times because they kept laughing and losing their places and trying to find back where, they were up to. So there was quite an arduous job there to keep it, focused on what we were editing. But that's fantastic. And inspired by that, you've also now got a second book coming out as well soon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. So
there's a sequel coming. So everybody watching, fingers crossed, you got to get this book. Gonna love the sequel. So how you did? So this was a second phase of lockdown that you wrote the second book on?
It was. So the second lockdown, and I'll be honest, second lockdown was a lot harder on everybody, I think, and it was a bit harder to get this one out as well. But in saying that, because it was the second lockdown,
right,
the shenanigans got even more ridiculous. So dare I say it, I think it's actually funnier than the first one.
Yes, we'll keep people baited for that. Now, there's a question I ask normally. Now, when in this situation too, because you're writing about true fiction, like it is a true fiction, so you really are writing about your family situation, but it is embellished. I understand. I hope it's embellished, because if you drink that much, you're in trouble. But but what do you feel when you're writing stories like this? What are the ethics in writing for you? And of course, it probably stems from your education and your teaching profile. But what is it for you in ethics for the writer?
So you mean, how do I sort of vet what I'm going to put out there?
Yeah, what are your ethics in the writing? So you've got to be discretionary, you've got to be professional, you want to make an entertaining book, but what are your ethics for you as a writer that you identified through this process as well, when you have to question yourself?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, I did want it to be funny and I wanted it to be entertaining, but I'm also a mum of these 2 little boys, and I'm trying to teach them to navigate the world correctly and professionally and politely. And I did have to revisit some things and say, well, if they're going to read this when they're 18 and 19, is this going to embarrass them? Are they going to be proud of it? So that was always in the back of my mind as well. How would they feel about reading this when they get a little bit older? So I think I am a writer, but I'm a mum first, and I needed to protect those little boys, I guess.
You're making me, just with that comment, you make me think of Leonard's mum off The Big Bang, how she just wrote a book on him as a kid, as he was just a research, and he's just messed up now. He's just like going Mum hated me. But now you're right. The ethics is that you do have 2 children that are coming into the future as well. So you have to respect that, they will have an impact from this book if it happened that way. So, no, and you've done it very well to them. I think they'll be very proud of you besides that. So one interesting thing I usually ask authors as well, which I like, is who was your favourite character in your book?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah, so now you really got, so who's your favourite character?
I was going to say, you are literally asking me to pick a favourite child.
So I was thinking, how you see that question is entirely up to you. No, I'm just joking. So what did you want to do when you were a child? So you're a teacher by trade. So was that something you always wanted to move into and teach as a teacher? But did you want to evolve into something else from a child? What would you want to be?
Well, when I was really little, I went through a phase that I wanted to be a vet.
Yep.
And then, actually, when I was in year 12, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my parents were both teachers. I sort of wanted to do something in sport. So whether it be physiotherapy or sports administration, something like that. My dad said to do the teaching degree as well. So I'm now a PE teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And so I guess, it is something in sport, but I still tell people that I don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Exactly. Like, why do we have to grow up? Who said that?
Exactly.
Yeah. So why do we have to do it? So, but that's great. That's good. So you work in physical fitness and teaching, yet were you always, you must have had some artistic flair. So I've got to ask the question, what was your artistic outlet? Because you write very creatively, naturally, and you've written very genuinely and authentically to your family and to the situation. So you have that talent. Where did that come from for you, do you think? Do you have another artistic outlet? Or?
I do like to create. I like to cook. I like to knit. I think, in another life, I probably should have been an art teacher. There's something.
So you do have that artistic soul.
I do have that creative, artistic. Yeah.
I can see you on a treadmill knitting. I don't know. It just sort of popped in my head. Okay. So, what is your writing kryptonite? Like, if you were challenged or stuck or you had difficulty, what's the kryptonite that stops you from writing? Have you come across anything yet?
No, well, it was because most of my writing took place during COVID. It was, being tired, stuck in the same routine, same thing happening every day. That sort of started to get to me. I found that my process changed a little bit during the second lockdown and writing the second book. I would take notes. And then I would probably sit down and write for a longer period of time. So maybe 3 or 4 hours, but perhaps only once or twice a week instead of doing that set time every day. So I found, my process changed a little bit. And it was just because of everything that was going on in the world.
Of course.
Yeah.
But also, I think because you wrote the first book, your psychology was more clear about your objective in the second book as well. So your process would have changed to fit the fact that you're becoming more diligent in the writing process and mastering it better. In your first book, you're probably just sort of putting it together and constructing it in the hopes that it comes out of something, and then developing that. So what else have you found in the artistic process, if there was anything difficult for you? So you've gone from writing the drafts. Did you find editing okay? Did you find the publishing process? And what are other processes in this?
I've actually found the whole process really, really interesting. Working with my illustrator was great. Just putting my ideas out there and I mean, that was something that was very personal to me as well, because this is my family, this is my children, and getting those first lot of illustrations back to proof, that was a little bit nerve-wracking for me, but she did the most brilliant job, and I think she's captured what I wanted perfectly. Good. So that was probably what I was most nervous about, but I've loved
sharing the creative.
And I've found the whole process really, really interesting. My editor was just lovely. It was great working with her, and I've learned about that process. And Yeah, I've actually really enjoyed it because
Good.
I'm a newbie to this. I didn't
Yeah.
know what to expect, and so I think there's a bit of comfort in that as well, because you don't know, so you're learning something new all the time.
And with that in mind, what would you pass on to newbies now? What would you say to people who are thinking of taking the steps you've taken? And it is sometimes overwhelming, the options and choices to be made. And what would you tell people now?
I would tell people just to be patient, just to wait, because it is very much a waiting game. And I think that getting your book published and out there, it's very much that analogy of the duck on the water. You might not see what's going on, but those legs are going flat out under the water, and it's happening, and it will happen, and it'll be great, but you just need to be patient.
Yeah, that's right. And using time to your benefit is the best thing. And I appreciate that too. It does help other people understand that, because newbies don't realize the processes involved sometimes and the tasks at hand. But the whole goal is to tell as many people about it before it comes out, so you can get the benefit. So did you find it interesting also to incorporate yourself into the stories and make, I guess, a joke of yourself? Because your character is very tongue-in-cheek about yourself. I mean, I think readers are going to be intrigued about, is this really her? Like, is this how she was? So did you find that difficult to sort of subjectify yourself into the story as well?
Yeah, not really. I think that's sort of my personality. I'm
really?
I like a bit of satire. I'm a bit sarcastic. I'm not scared to make a dag of myself. I mean, it's sort of what I do in my everyday life at school. I need to put myself out there to make the kids feel more comfortable so that they can put themselves out there as well. So that's pretty much me though.
I'm sure everybody reading it and anybody watching this with you will certainly be enlightened to learn more about you through this escapade and your family, within means. So in thoughts of that too, do you have any, besides, sending yourself up, is there any other writing quirks that you have that you found through the process? Like, do you write in particular music? Do you write, as you say, in a particular way, barefoot? What ways do you find yourself writing? What quirks do you have? Do you think you write in a certain pen or pencil?
I have a rocking chair. I'm actually sitting in it at the moment. But I had to be in my rocking chair in my little quiet space, and I guess that was one of my little quirks, looking out the window at the big pear tree that we've got in the front yard.
That's definitely a writing quirk, and sitting in a rocking chair to write. Definitely. Yeah. And you wrote on a computer, I imagine, a laptop or a computer.
Yes, I did. I didn't get the quill and the ink out.
No. Well, we've had authors who write on their phone. Honestly, thumbs, I couldn't do it myself. I don't know how they do that. It's amazing. But I guess whatever works for people, what they're comfortable in writing, because writing is a personal experience as much as an expression, I think. So, so look, honestly, Fern, to tell you, your book is out in May, and everybody watching, I do encourage you, please go to your local bookshop and buy a copy of this wonderful book, because you will laugh, you will smile, and Fern has done a magical job. And we also want to support local business, so we do ask you to go to local bookstores. You can buy it online, of course, wherever you are, but it's available in May. And Fern, I thank you so much for your time. It's wonderful talking to you. I know you're going to have great success with this book.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. Goodbye. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will endeavour to see you the next book of the General's Log with Fern coming out very soon. So thank you, and grab a copy. Have a good night. Now.